Welcome to Ridgewood Talks. Through this podcast, we will be introducing you to some of the leaders and legends in our village. We'll keep you updated about fascinating local events, and we'll dig into the town's hot topics and so much more. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Jeannie Johnson, the founder of Ridgewood Talks and Ridgewood Walks. The goal of these initiatives is to create a kinder, more connected, and more vibrant community. I'm thrilled to be co-hosting this podcast with my good friend and all-around wonderful guy, Jordan Kaufman. We look forward to meeting with you weekly and hearing your thoughts on who and what you'd like to learn about in our beautiful hometown. Enjoy this episode. Good morning, Jordan Kaufman. I'm reporting live from northern Minnesota. How are you in Ridgewood, New Jersey?
I'm good, Jeannie. You know, it's been an incredible time to be not in the Northeast, where we just got hit with torrential rains over the weekend. A lot of us are a little crazed from sports being moved all over the place, with fields being closed in some of the area where there's been some flooding and stuff. Hopefully everyone's homes are okay. Hopefully everyone's safe and there's no issues. And it's beautiful out now, but it was dicey there on Friday.
I'm sorry to hear that. I hope everybody is doing well. I'm sure there's a lot of chatter about what's going on with the fields, and that's always an issue. And another super important topic is the Board of Education election, which is coming up on Tuesday, November the 7th. There are 2 board seats up, and each have a 3-year term. And lucky for us, 7 community members have stepped up to compete for those seats. So that's pretty good that we have that much involvement and that many people paying attention to what's going on at our Board of Education. So as you know, we here at Ridgewood Talks, we want all the voters to go to the polls with as much information as possible. So we're going to talk to each one of the candidates over the next month. So our listeners here at Ridgewood Talks are going to learn more about the folks who are throwing their hat into the ring and where they stand on the issues that affect our schools. I asked, Jordan, I don't know if you saw this, but I asked voters to submit questions to our Ridgewood Talks email address. So we're going to answer some of those questions during this series as well. And of course, we always invite listeners to attend the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum. And that forum for the Board of Education election is going to be coming up. It's really soon, October 18th, from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Ed Center at Cottage Place. If you want more information on that, listeners, you can go to the Ridgewood League of Women Voters.org website. And so our first guest in this series is here for her second time. It's Mary Micale. For those of you who don't know, Mary is a lawyer by trade with extensive experience in multi-party commercial litigation. She's lived in Ridgewood for almost 20 years now. They've raised 3 kids. All the kids are products of the Ridgewood Public School System. Her 2 boys are in college, and her daughter is a student at Ridgewood High School. Mary has been active in this community since she moved here and lending most of her time to the Ridgewood Public Schools. She's the former president of the Ridgewood Education Foundation. And those of you who don't know, the Ridgewood Education Foundation is a nonprofit organization that aims to enhance our public education here in Ridgewood. The REF, they collaborate with the district's administration, its educators, the home and school associations, and the Board of Education. So it's an outstanding organization, and listeners, you can learn more if you want to go and visit their website. It's ridgewoodedfoundation.org. So more about Mary. She has served on the home and school executive boards at Ridge School and at Ridgewood High School. She's also been involved with the HSA at GW. And for those of you who don't know, each school has a home and school association. That's the venue for parents to learn about issues taking place inside their children's school campus. And it's also a great way for parents to get to know not only their children's teachers, but other teachers, staff members, administrators, and other parents. So you know what? We very much encourage anyone who's listening to get involved with their local schools, home and school association. That said, let's go back to Mary, who was the president of Federated HSA. Now, Federated HSA serves as a resource for cooperative efforts among all the home and school associations in the Ridgewood Public School District. So the members of Federated include, of course, the Executive Board of Officers. And like I said, Mary was the president of that. They are all former HSA presidents. And then all the current HSA presidents district-wide are part of this organization, the superintendent of Ridgewood Public Schools, and then representatives from the Board of Ed and from Ridgewood Public Schools and affiliated organizations. So all that to say, Mary, you have a wealth of information about what goes on in our Ridgewood Public School system. So welcome. Thank you for being here. And with all your experience, you certainly seem to, again, have a pulse on what's going on inside of our schools. So I want you to walk us through that connection. And then most importantly, I'd like you to help us understand why you feel it's important to run for the Board of Ed. And can you tell us, for listeners who want to learn more about you, I want you to share your website address and so on. Okay?
Okay, great. So thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss some more about my candidacy. To answer the easiest question first. So my website is Micale for BOE.org, and it's MICALEFORBOE 23.org. Sorry. Micale for BOE23.org is my website. So I'm running for the Board of Ed because our schools are important. And we're kind of at a juncture now in Ridgewood where we have an opportunity to change the dynamic of the board itself and the way the board is interacting with the schools. And I think that I can contribute positively to the work of the Board of Ed. I really believe in the Ridgewood Public Schools, and I really am so proud to have all three of my children go through the Ridgewood Public Schools and to be a part of the community that supports them. In terms of the connection between the HSAs and the Board of Ed and the schools, so each individual school has its own homeschool association, and the homeschool association serves as a conduit for communication between the parents and the administration, and then that will go up to the BOEs, particularly at the federated level. And we also support the schools, not just financially, but in terms of providing resources, woman power and manpower to make sure that activities and things get done. And what I have found, particularly at the federated level, is that when you have a group of dedicated volunteers who really understand not just what the needs of the students and the parents are, and not just from their own individual perspectives, but from the perspectives of the wider community, and also the perspectives of the teachers, talk about boots on the ground, right? And the administrators, and have those relationships, that it expedites identification of issues and it expedites solutions to potential problems. And so that then will usually you filter down, right? But I'm going to say that kind of bubbles up then to the Board of Ed at the federated level. So as president of Federated, and that was over the past 2 years, that's my most recent stint. And I'm now currently, again, the president of the high school HSA. But as president of Federated, we had quite a bit of things going on in this district, challenges that we had to address, initiatives that we were eager. And when I say we, I mean the community, not me personally, and the administration, that we were eager to get moving. And so at the federated level, with all of these kind of knowledgeable volunteers in the room, we were able to identify issues, have constructive discussions with the Board of Ed, perhaps in a way that would not have happened. Doesn't happen that way at public comment, because public comment is limited and there's no give and take. And so we were able to, no pun intended, kind of educate some members of the Board of Ed on some of the concerns at the parent level, and also educate then the parents as to what was really going on at the Board of Ed in terms of, it's not it's not as simple as saying, I'm going to be a member of the Board of Ed. Therefore, I would like to change this. I want to see this happen. I want to see that happen. That is absolutely not the role of a Board of Ed member. Board of Ed has to adhere to a code of ethics, and they have to basically take an oath to understand that their job, the job of the Board of Ed, is not to run the schools, but to ensure that the schools are well run. So what does that mean? That means that the people that run the schools, that develop curriculum, that develop teaching methods, those are the professional educators, the people that have been trained, have gone to school, and have experience in educating people. The members of the Board of Ed are not those people. However, the people on the Board of Ed have an obligation to see what's going on, watch what's happening, assess, ask critical questions. If you're hearing that things are not going well, ask why, get an answer. If a initiative is put forth and it's reasonable and you vote in support of it, that's fine. Then you follow it and you see, is it working? Is it not working? If it's not working, why isn't it working? Does it need to be tweaked? And so it ends up being a collaborative relationship between all of the parties to make sure at the end of the day that the educational welfare of the students, and that's actually almost a quote from the Board of Ethics, I think it's educational welfare of the child, is properly taken care of at the school level. I think I answered maybe more than you asked. But if there's any follow-ups,
it was a thorough answer.
That was that was an excellent answer, actually. And I was trying to hit my mute button to jump in there. Yeah. So some of the other things about being a Board of Ed member, let's just review some of that.
Sure.
The Board of Education does not, like you said, run the Ridgewood Public Schools. That's the job for the superintendent. Rather, the Board of Ed's job is to ensure the schools are well run, exactly as you said. The board does this by, number one, setting district policies and goals. Number
Correct.
two, communicating policies and goals to the superintendent. Number three, overseeing the budget. Number four, hiring and evaluating the superintendent. Number five, serving as the communication link between the community and the school district. So I want to go through all of these one by one.
Great.
So based on the questions that we have received through our email, a study just came out that said that Ridgewood has fallen out of a couple of steps for being one of the state's best schools. I was told that two of the reasons why we lost points, even though we did well, we haven't done as well in that particular survey as in the past, because there is a lack of second language in the elementary school, and the students are not getting enough physical education. Am I correct?
You are correct. So just to kind of give a little bit more background on that. So what you're referring to is actually not a survey. It's actually an audit that's, and it's called QSAC. The bottom line is what it is it's a committee of, it's either state or county appointed individuals who come in and basically audit the district on 4 different areas. One of them is curriculum. One of them is, I think it's governance. One is finance and facilities. Okay. And they have very specific points in a rubric that we need to meet. So Ridgewood on the whole scored very well, except for curriculum, where we received a grade of 80%, which is, kind of unheard of for Ridgewood, because we're considered, niche.com just came out and said we were like the 5th best public school system in the state. But the state came in and evaluated our programs, and we did not get good marks because in spite of the fact that there is a state mandate that there needs to be live world language instruction in elementary school and a certain amount of minutes for PE instruction in elementary school, those are state mandates. Despite the fact that those state mandates have been in place for at least 2 years, okay? We didn't have that here. And we didn't have that here because the Board of Ed, at the time that those items were presented in a budget, which I believe was in, I want to tell you at the end of 2021, Dr. Gorman presented that budget. The Board of Ed voted against it because, you'd have to go back and look at what the rationale for the votes were. But the Board of Ed opted not to approve hiring of additional PE teachers and live world language instruction. So we were out of compliance with the state mandate for no good reason, quite frankly, because we had the money. We ended up that year with a $6 million surplus in the budget. And as a result, we don't have as good marks on QSAC, which is a concern. Having said that, it's important to note that we have taken steps now to change that. The Board of Ed has recently approved the hire of new foreign language, world language, instructors at elementary school in Spanish. And I believe we have enough PE teachers now to satisfy the minutes. So the good news is that we're moving forward with a new superintendent, and things are getting done. The not so good news is that, we didn't do what we were supposed to do for a while. And I think it's important to note that it's kind of a new day here in Ridgewood. It's been, the past couple of years have been hard. There's been a lot of reasons why it's been hard. We've had COVID. I don't need to tell the listeners and everybody has had struggles, but go ahead.
Mary, I do want to jump in on some of those struggles, because as we go over the guidelines for what a Board of Education member does, you just touched on that, the communicating of policies and goals to the superintendent. And so we know that the superintendent recommended the world language program and the PE, and the board decided to ignore that. And that's concerning, obviously, because as we mentioned, that our scores went down. And then, we say the other part is hiring and evaluating a superintendent. And so when you're talking about some of these struggles, from what my information has gleaned, since 2020, in the last 2.5 years, the Ridgewood Public School System has experienced 4 superintendents, 2 assistant superintendents, 4 business administrators. And so I'm wondering, how much instability has all this turnover caused, and what is the reason for all of that turnover?
I'm going to start with the easier answer first, okay? Which is, what problems are caused by such instability? A lot. Now, I have to tell you that, at least from my perspective, again, boots on the ground, I think that, each of the administrators in the buildings and the teachers, they've not lost their dedication. They have always worked very, very hard. And so from a day-to-day basis, to the extent that good things were in place and people were able to continue to do their jobs at the building levels, I think things went well. Okay. There's no question that the loss of leadership at the Ed Center is enormously, unsettling, and it does cause a lack of stability because you don't have anybody running the ship. Okay. So first we lost Dr. Fishbein, and then we had Dr. Gorman, who served as an interim and then came in as our formal superintendent, and then he left. And then this past year, we had Dr. Leonard Fitz, who was only an interim superintendent. And we didn't have leadership at the top, particularly in the last year, for things to get put in front of the board, recommendations to be made, which is what the job of the superintendent is, to, further the curriculum and further the education of our students. And so even though we ultimately ended up with world language teachers, we had an entire debacle at the board where all this work was done and the supervisors created a plan for world language teachers. People were offered jobs, and then the board determined not to hire them because they weren't given appropriate information. So things were very destabilizing. That's the only way I can put it. And there's no question in my mind that, at least at the elementary level, in the past couple of years, there were deficiencies in the curriculum as a result of that. The business administrator's office has seen a tremendous amount of turnover. As we have a new superintendent, we now have a new business administrator, Julie Cott, who appears to be fantastic. When the old business administrator left, and then we had an interim who was in here for a couple of months, we didn't even have a budget. And so the result was that our budget was delayed in being prepared. The budget is not clear. We ended up last year, not this year, we haven't finished the audit for this year, but last year we had a $12 million surplus under that BA. And, just so that everybody understands what surplus means, it seems obvious. It means that there was money in the budget, right, which was the basis for some of our taxes, that was not used. So money that was not used, and yet we were deficient in, some pretty key areas in terms of curriculum. And also there were a lot of facilities work that needed to be done that wasn't done. So clearly when you don't have someone watching the books the way they're supposed to be and administering the business side of things and administering the educational side of things as a superintendent, and then, we lost our assistant superintendent of curriculum and we now have an interim superintendent of curriculum, you don't have that overarching sense of where are we going? What's important to us? How do we reach the goals? How do we address all these different cohorts of learners that we have? And people are kind of running around. That's the bad news, right? The good news is that we now have, it's a new day. And I keep saying that because I think it's important to acknowledge that we have now new administration in place. The past couple of meetings, run at the Board of Ed level have been really well run. The board is working hard at developing goals that are clear for the superintendent to understand what he needs to do for the year. So I think we're on the right track. But what's important is that we keep on the right track. And that's one of the reasons why this election is so important, because at the board level, we need to make sure that the people sitting in those seats at the Board of Ed meetings are committed to doing what their job is and are committed to furthering the tradition of excellence at the Ridgewood Public Schools.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because again, now we'll touch on that fifth point. It's the role of a Board of Education member is serving as the communication link between the community and the school district. And I think that's really important, that we have somebody that can efficiently communicate what the goals, not only of parents of students that are in the district, but also people like me. I am an empty nester. And so I'm a community member, and I feel like my voice matters too, because I'm a taxpayer.
Absolutely.
I help provide for the school district. So,
and can I just jump in right there just 1 second, because I think you just raised a really, really important point. Not only because you're a taxpayer, right, which is very important because you are in fact funding the schools with your tax dollars, but the other thing is it's important, and I know that you understand this, is that every member of the community, whether or not they actually are in the school or have a kid in the school, benefits from having excellent schools. Okay,
oh, for sure.
You want
my property
a rich
values
community.
are
Your property values, and you want to have a community full of people that are well educated, that understand how to interact with each other in a civic way, in an intelligent way. And yes, so it's very important always to remember that the schools do not only benefit the kids that are in there every day.
So thanks so much, Mary, for taking us through some of the obstacles that the Board of Ed and the Ridgewood education system has faced and some of those challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about what your priorities are if you're to win this seat, and how you're going to enact some of the change and visions that's really going to help the town?
So that's an excellent question. Thank you for getting to the point. As I say, it's a new day. We're going to move forward. So how do I want to move forward? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to reestablish a positive, collaborative working relationship between the Board of Ed and district administrators. That's the first thing. The second thing we need to do, and it maybe at the same time, is we need to reestablish a positive, collaborative working relationship among the members of the board. Healthy debate is good. Critical decision-making is good, but it needs to be done in a respectful and constructive way. So how am I going to do that? I think you do that by walking into the room with an open mind and understanding that you may not, in fact, be the smartest person in the room. I never claim to be the smartest person in the room. Okay. I listen and I understand, and I've certainly made it a mark, not only of my volunteering, but also professionally. You take the ideas from every party and you try to find a middle solution. Negotiation skills are really important, even when everybody's on the same side. So my approach is really an important part of what I think recommends me for this seat, because that is what infuses every decision that is made. With regard to the budget, this is a huge priority because the budget is not clear. And we need to understand what it is, how much money we have, what are the immutables, what are the expenses that we have to pay regardless. There are things outside of our control. What are the things that are the priorities of the district that we need to fix now, or that we need to address now? What do we need to do to address them? And then what are the things that we are part of our aspirational goals, and where do they fit into the needs? And then value judgments need to be made in collaboration with the community and with the administrators and the teachers as to what aspirational goals we can fund at any given time. So, operating a budget, it's a very complex thing. But right now, I don't think anyone has any idea really what's in that budget. Superintendent frankly almost said as much, that they're really delving into what the budget is and they're trying to figure that out. That's essential. I don't think you can overstate that. So that's one of my priorities. I also think that, there's been a lot of concern at the elementary level about the reading program. There is not a clear sense in the community as to, what the building blocks of the reading program are. I think we need to find out what they are. I think we need a clear explanation, and then we need to stress test it. Are our students learning how to read, understanding that there are different cohorts of learners in that regard? I would say the same thing with regard to the math program. We have a new math supervisor. I've met with her personally. She is fantastic. She is very enthusiastic, and she's very well read on math, and she's working on the math curriculum, the pathways to different advanced math within the district. She's looking at the sequencing. We recently changed the sequencing between geometry and algebra. She's looking at that. She's tweaking that program. And so there's a lot of good work being done, and I don't think anybody really knows it. So we need to get that out there. It needs to be clear. And then we need to start that process of, how is this working? Is it working? What are the assessment tools that we use internally? Test results, parental experience, teacher experience. And then we need to move forward in a clear way. There's been a lot of, and I'm not trying to go back to the past, but, I think we did as well as we could in some ways in the past with a lot of what's gone on, but it's a new day. Let's move forward clearly and efficiently, which means timely decisions at meetings, showing up prepared to board meetings, knowing what it is that your community says, not just one part of the community, the entire community, and communicating outwardly as well as you listen to what's coming in terms of the input. I hope that answers what my priorities are.
Thank you. Yes. You seem to be very well informed. And so I want to know, have you met personally with the new superintendent?
Not he and I alone, but I've sat with him at Federated. I've been at every single Board of Ed meeting. I've shaken his hand a couple of times, but yeah, I have, we've talked just at some of the meet and greet, but yes, I sat with him at Federated when he presented at Federated last month, and we're going to do it again this Thursday. And he's very clear on what the job is ahead of him.
Okay, that's great. Jordan, do you have any other questions? I mean, I feel like this is a really thorough interview. You've touched on the history that people are curious about. You have definitely laid out a very clear picture for the vision that you have for the future. And
if you don't mind, Mary, just because for me,
no, please go ahead.
I attend the Board of Ed meetings sporadically. It's usually through Zoom.
Right.
And one of the ways, though, that the school systems, beyond my kids in the school systems, one of the big things that touches us is the HSA. And that's a place where you have a ton of experience. And I wonder, for some of the parents who their main form of communication is through HSA and through the HSA representatives, how does that, how should people think about that with respect to the Board of Ed? How does your experience there potentially become a game changer? In what ways can the residents who have kids in the school system use that mechanism, as well as have confidence that, their voice is being heard if there's someone from the HSA with your kind of experience up there on the BOE, helping their, ideas and perspectives get heard and attended to?
So the first thing is, in terms of generally the HSA, okay, the best way to utilize your HSA to get information and to be heard is to go to those HSA meetings and to volunteer and be part of the process. You develop relationships with people. For example, I can speak, best right now to the RHS HSA. At the RHS HSA meeting, we ask people for questions ahead of time. What do you want to know about what's going on in the school? So do you have a question for Jeff Nias on last year? There were a lot of questions on Later Start. Do you have a question about the math sequencing curriculum? Do you have a question? There's going to be a lot of questions probably about what's going on with the high school fields right now, right? So we operate as a conduit. Those questions are asked live to the administrators. The administrators come to the meeting, and you have an opportunity to have a give and take right there. So you get a more informal conversation with a broader answer within the context of those meetings. In terms of that being an advantage to have somebody who's got the kind of HSA experience I have on the board, I think there are numerous advantages to that. Number one, I have a relationship with a lot of administrators within the district. So I understand I've watched them. Sometimes I just sit back and observe them. I understand what they're doing. I observe some of the external and internal pressures that are on them. I'm a parent. I know a lot of parents. I've talked to a lot of parents. So I've had access to a variety of experiences. All of that is knowledge that I've kind of collected that I would then bring with me to a seat on the board. Accessibility to the board members is very, very important. And I'm not the only one who would offer that. I'm not suggesting that, but that accessibility is important. What's important, though, is to remember that once you sit on the Board of Ed, okay, you are not only the voice for maybe the 2 out of 10 people that have sought your ear, okay? You don't go in there with a preconceived agenda. The point is to be accessible and to be a listener and then a communicator, but for everyone, and to understand at the end of the day that your votes and your priorities have to reflect the priorities, of the majority and of the whole. Okay, so I think that that's very important. But I think that I have, institutional knowledge in the sense that I kind of know what's gone on. People ask me questions about the calendar, and I can refer to my experience on the calendar committee. People ask me questions about, well, I'm very concerned about XYZ, and I can say, talk directly to Dave Bailey at the high school, or talk to Jeff Nice. He's a great guy. So I have the sense of what's been going on at all these different levels at the high school, and I can't see how that information does anything other than help me when I'm trying to make decisions, when I need to get information for the district as a whole. Does that answer your question?
Thoroughly.
Yes.
Very well said, Mary.
I talk a lot. Sorry about that.
Not at all. You've definitely been very informative on this interview, and I really want to thank you so much for giving us your time. Once again, why don't you give our listeners your website address and tell them how they can learn more about you?
Okay. So, you can learn more about me by going to my website, which is www.micaleforboe23.org. It has a lot of information on it. You can always email me at micaleforboe23@gmail.com. I have a Facebook account, Mary Micale, and I have a Facebook page that you can follow, Mary Micale for BOE23. And I'm going to a lot of coffees. I am participating in the League of Women Voters debate. Let me start with that. And I've also just filled out a survey of Voters 411 that's put out by the League, which has some questions they asked all of the candidates to answer. I'm going to every single HSA meeting to talk a little bit about my candidacy. And I would be more than happy to meet a group of people or 1 or 2 people, talk to you on the phone, meet with you. I have, like I said, coffees that are scheduled. I can make sure you can get to one if you're not aware of one, where you can talk to me one-on-one and in a group about what it is that I think is important, what I bring to, the seat, and also just to get an assessment of who you think I am. At the end of the day, an election is a job interview. Basically, all of us are interviewing for the job with the community. So you need to look not only at the skills and the talents and the experience that each individual candidate brings, but what you need to look at is, who are they? Can they work with people? Can they work with me? Are they the kind of person, is their approach the kind of approach that I want to see at the Board of Ed level or not? And I think that's a really important factor, because the personal characteristics of each of us, and we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. At the end of the day, you need to make an assessment as to who it is you want there, casting those votes one way or another, and creating those policies that are going to affect your kids and your schools and ultimately your community.
Very well said. Thank you again so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best.
And I thank you both so much. I appreciate your patience with me as I kind of went on, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about this.
Thank you so much.